The great hall of the conclave stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light, changing colors based on the mood of those inside. Right now the crystals glowed a deep hostile red. Ambassador Yellen Vasquez stood alone at the center of the speaking platform. She was a small woman, by human standards, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her face showed the lines of 60 years of life, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She wore the simple black uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, with no medals or decorations, just a small blue planet stitched over her heart, around her, rising up in great curved tiers like the inside of a bowl sat the representatives of 1,000 civilizations. Some were humanoid, most were not. There were beings made of living rock, their bodies crackling with internal heat. There were creatures that floated in anti-gravity fields, their bodies too delicate for normal gravity. There were hive minds that spoke through dozens of linked organisms and ancient intelligences that existed as patterns of light inside crystalline matrices. All of them were looking at her, and none of them were friendly. At the highest tier sat the Council of 12, the rulers of the most powerful species in the known galaxy. They had held their positions for thousands of years. They had watched younger species rise and fall like waves on a shore. They did not fear anything, especially not humans. High Arbiter Keth of the Dominary Empire leaned forward in his seat. He was tall and thin, with skin the color of dried blood and eyes like pools of liquid gold. His people had conquered 300 star systems before humans had learned to make fire. His voice echoed through the hall, translated instantly into 1,000 languages. You may speak human. The Council grants you this courtesy, though we are not required to do so. Vasquez did not bow. She did not show fear. She simply nodded once and began to speak. Honored members of the Council, representatives of the conclave, I come before you today not to beg, but to reason. 100 years ago, the species of this galaxy made a decision. You looked at humanity and saw a threat. You placed us under embargo. You cut us off from trade, from travel, from contact with the wider universe. You built a wall around our space and told us to stay inside. She paused, letting her words settle into the silence. For 100 years, we have respected that boundary. We have not crossed it. We have not attacked the ships that patrol our borders. We have not responded to the insults and provocations that have been directed at our people. We have been patient. Ripple of amusement passed through the hall. Several representatives laughed openly. The idea of humans being patient was clearly funny to them. Vasquez continued as if she had not noticed. Today I ask you to reconsider, not because we are weak and need your help, not because we are desperate and have no choice, but because the galaxy would be better if we work together. We have much to offer. We ask only for the chance to prove it. She stopped speaking and waited. For a long moment there was silence. Then Keth Varen rose from his seat. His robes, made from the woven light of dying stars, flowed around him like liquid shadow. The human speaks of patience, he said, his voice filled with contempt. But we remember what humans truly are. We have watched your species since you first crawled out of your oceans. We saw how you treated each other, the wars, the genocides, the endless, senseless violence. He gestured with one long, thin hand, and Holographic images appeared in the air. Around the hall, images from human history, armies marching cities, burning mushroom clouds rising over devastated landscapes. This is humanity. Keith Voren said, "This is what you are. You speak of peace, but peace is not in your nature. You speak of cooperation, but you cannot even cooperate with each other. How can we trust you with the stars when you could not be trusted with a single world?" Vasquez's expression did not change. She had expected this. She had seen these same images 1,000 times used as weapons against her people. "Those images are old," she said quietly. "Some are hundreds of years old." "We have changed, have you?" Kevorin asked. "Your species is only 300 years old in space. That is nothing. That is the blink of an eye. My people have existed for 50,000 years, the Silene for longer still. We have learned that true nature does not change so quickly. You are what you are, human, and what you are is dangerous." He turned to address the full council. "I move that we reject the human petition. I further move that we strengthen the embargo. The containment directive has served us well for a century. Let it continue for a century more. Let the humans remain in their cage until they have proven beyond any doubt that they can be trusted." One by one, the other members of the council spoke in support. The Silthine, whose bodies were made of flowing silver liquid, spoke of the need for caution. The Oryx hegemony, massive beings covered in natural armor, spoke of the threat humans pose to smaller species. The crystalline minds of Fastus, who existed as living patterns inside perfect geometric shapes, spoke of mathematical models that predicted human expansion would destabilize the galaxy. Not one spoke in humanity's favor. The vote was unanimous. The petition was denied. But Keth Voron was not finished. "There is one more matter," he said, and something in his tone made the hall fall silent. "For too long we have been content to simply contain the human threat. We have watched and waited, hoping they would learn their place, but recent reports suggest that humans have been attempting to develop new technologies, weapons that could threaten the peace we have built." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "I propose that we move from containment to active suppression. Any human vessel found outside its designated zone will be destroyed without warning. Any human colony that shows signs of military development will be subject to immediate inspection and, if necessary, neutralization. We will not wait for the humans to become a threat. We will ensure they never become one." The hall erupted in noise. Some species protested that this was too extreme. Others argued it was not extreme enough. But in the end, when the vote was called, the result was the same. Unanimous. The containment directive was expanded. Humanity was not just imprisoned now, they were under sentence of death for any attempt to escape. Vasquez stood through it all, her face showing nothing. When the votes were finished, when the cheering and congratulations had died down, she spoke one last time. "I thank the council for its time," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I understand your decision. I do not agree with it, but I understand it." She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of species after species. "You see us as children, dangerous children who cannot be trusted with sharp objects. You believe you are protecting the galaxy from us. You believe you are doing the right thing." She paused. "But I want you to remember this moment. Remember that we came to you in peace. Remember that we asked for nothing but a chance. Remember that you rejected us. Not because of anything we did, but because of what you feared we might do. Keith Varon laughed. Is that a threat? Human. Vasquez shook her head. No, high Arbiter, it is not a threat. It is a warning. You have made your choice. Today, I pray that you understand it. Wait, I pray that you will not come to regret it. The laughter spread through the hall. The idea that humans could make the mighty conclave regret anything was the funniest thing most of them had heard in years. Vasquez did not smile. She simply bowed her head once, turned, and walked out of the great hall. Her shuttle was waiting at the diplomatic dock. It was a small vessel, barely large enough for a crew of 3, painted in the plain gray colors of Earth's diplomatic fleet. Compared to the massive warships that filled the station's other docks, it looked like a toy. Her aide, a young man named Thomas Chen, was waiting at the airlock. His face was tight with controlled anger. I watched the proceedings, he said as she boarded. They didn't even consider it. They had decided before you even spoke. Vasquez nodded. I know. Then why did we come? Why did we go through this farce? The ambassador looked at him with something like sadness in her eyes. Because we had to try, Thomas. We had to give them every chance. We had to be absolutely certain that there was no other way. No other way to what? Vasquez did not answer. She simply walked to the shuttle's small observation window and looked out at the stars. Take us home, she said quietly. The shuttle detached from the station and began its long journey back to human space. Behind them, the conclave continued its business, already forgetting the small human woman who had come to beg for scraps. They would remember her soon enough. 3 days later, the shuttle crossed the border into human space. Thomas expected to see the usual patrol ships, the small defensive fleet that guarded their boundaries. Instead, he saw nothing. Where are the patrols? He asked. Vasquez smiled slightly. It was the first time she had smiled since leaving the conclave. They have been reassigned. Rassened. To where? When Baper, the ambassador, turned away from the window. There are things I need to tell you, Thomas. Things that very few people know. When we reach Earth, you will be briefed fully, but for now I need you to understand one thing. She looked at him with those sharp, clear eyes. The galaxy thinks they have been containing us. They think they have been keeping us in a cage, preventing us from becoming a threat. They are wrong. We have not been contained. We have been hiding. Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. Hiding. From what? Not from anything. Hiding ourselves, hiding what we have become. I don't understand. Vasquez placed a hand on his shoulder. You will. Soon everyone will. The shuttle continued its journey into human space. Behind them, in the vast emptiness between stars, something stirred, something massive, something that had been waiting for a very long time. The conclave had made its choice. It had chosen to treat humanity as an enemy. It had chosen to cage them, to suppress them, to prepare for their eventual destruction. It had chosen extinction. It just didn't know whose extinction it had chosen. On the dominary border, Captain Thr Cal of the patrol fleet received his new orders. Shoot on sight. No warnings, no mercy. Any human vessel found outside its designated zone was to be destroyed. Immediately, he read the orders with satisfaction. For 30 years he had watched the human border. For 30 years. He had waited for them to try something. Now finally, he had permission to act. He looked at his fleet array around him. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet against the primitive human vessels. It would be no contest at all. Let them come, he said. To his officers, let them try to break out. We will teach them the price of defiance. His officers cheered in the darkness between stars. Something watched them, something old, something patient, something human, and deep in its metal heart, something began to wake up. The countdown had begun. Ambassador Vasquez sat in her private quarters aboard the shuttle, staring at a single photograph. It showed a young woman in a military uniform, smiling at the camera. Her daughter killed 40 years ago when a Dominari patrol had accidentally destroyed a human medical ship. They had called it a mistake. They had offered compensation. They had promised it would never happen again. It had happened again and again and again. Hundreds of ships, thousands of lives, all mistakes, all accidents, all unpunished. The galaxy thought humans were dangerous because of their capacity for violence. They were wrong. Humans were dangerous because of their capacity for patience, for planning, for remembering. Vasquez closed her eyes and whispered a single word. Soon in the great hall of the conclave, the crystals continued to glow red. The representatives continued their business, making deals and alliances, fighting their petty wars and playing their ancient games. None of them noticed that the human ambassador had not looked defeated when she left. None of them saw the small smile she had hidden as she walked through the doors. None of them understood that they had just made the worst mistake in the history of the galaxy, but they would. Soon they would understand everything, and by then it would be far too late. Captain Thinkel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominari warship, Eternal Judgment, and watched the empty space before him. For 30 years this had been his life, watching, waiting, staring at the invisible line that marked the edge of human territory. It was, he had to admit, deeply boring. Human border was the least desirable posting in the Dominari fleet. Nothing ever happened here. The humans knew their place. They sent their pathetic little ships to the edge of their territory, and then they turned back. Like the cowards they were. In 3 decades, THR had never fired a shot in anger, but now finally things were changing. The new orders had arrived. Just days ago, the containment directive had been strengthened. Any human vessel found outside its designated zone was to be destroyed immediately. No warnings, no mercy. For the first time in a century, the Dominari were authorized to take aggressive action against the humans. Then was pleased, more than pleased. He was excited. After 30 years of watching and waiting, he would finally get to do what he had trained for. He would finally get to show the humans why the Dominari had ruled the stars for 50,000 years. His fleet was impressive. 300 warships arranged in a perfect defensive formation along the border. Each ship was a masterpiece of Dominari engineering, built to specifications that had been refined over millennia. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand the heat of a star. Their crews were the finest soldiers in the galaxy. Against them the humans had nothing. Their ships were primitive things, barely capable of faster than light travel. Their weapons were laughable. Their defenses were non-existent. If the humans were foolish enough to try anything, they would be crushed in moments. Captain, his Sensor officer called out, "I am." Detecting an anomaly, Thenol turned. From the viewport, what kind of anomaly? Gravitational disturbance. Approximately 12,000 km off the starboard bow. Then frowned. Source: unknown, sir. The readings are inconsistent. It appears and disappears without pattern. Could it be a natural phenomenon? The sensor officer hesitated. Possible, sir, but the signature does not match anything in our database. It almost looks like something very large is moving through space, but we cannot see it. Then felt a flicker of unease, but he pushed it aside. The Dominari did not feel fear. The Dominari did not run from shadows. Continue monitoring, he ordered. Alert me if there are any changes. Yes, Captain. For the next several hours, the anomaly continued to appear and disappear. Sometimes it was closer. Sometimes it was farther away, but it never went away entirely. It was almost as if something was circling the fleet, watching them, studying them. Thrall told himself it was nothing. Space was full of strange phenomena, gravitational echoes from distant stars, ripples in the fabric of space. There was nothing out there. There was nothing to fear. Then the transmission came. It arrived on all frequencies simultaneously, cutting through every channel the fleet was monitoring. Human voice, calm and measured, speaking in perfect Dominari. This is the UNC. Prometheus, we request that you stand down and withdraw from the sector. You have 1 standard hour to comply. For a moment the bridge was silent, then began to laugh. One ship, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. One ship demands that my entire fleet withdraw. His officers laughed with him. The idea was absurd. One ship against 300. It was suicide. It was madness. It was the most ridiculous thing any of them had ever heard. Then walked to the communications console and opened a channel. Attention. Human vessel, this is Captain Thenkel of the Dominari Imperial Fleet. I do not know where you are hiding, but I suggest you show yourself immediately. Your demand is rejected. You have exactly 1 minute to surrender, or we will find you and destroy you. There was a pause, then the human voice returned. Captain Thrall, we are aware of your fleet capabilities. We are also aware that you have received new orders to shoot on sight. We are not here to surrender. We are here to give you a chance to survive. Please withdraw. This is not a request you want to refuse. Then felt his anger rising. The arrogance of these humans was astounding. They were nothing. They had nothing, and yet they dared to threaten him. Find that ship, he ordered his sensor officer. I want to know where it is hiding. I am trying, Captain, but I cannot locate it. There is nothing on our sensors, nothing at all. That is impossible. We received their transmission. They must be somewhere. I know, sir, but our sensors show only empty space. Thenol growled in frustration. The humans were playing games. They had found some way to hide their ship, some primitive trick that confused Dominari sensors, but it did not matter. One ship, no matter how well hidden, could not stand against his fleet. All ships, he ordered, spread out and begin a systematic search. Find that vessel, and when you find it, destroy it. His fleet began to move, ships separating from the formation and spreading out across the sector. They scanned every frequency, every wavelength, every possible hiding place. They found nothing. 20 minutes passed, then 30, then 40. The human voice came. Again, Captain Thenel, you have 20 minutes remaining. This is your final warning. We do not wish to harm you, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Please withdraw. Then slammed his fist against the console. Show yourself. Coward, stop hiding and face us. There was a long pause. Very well, the human voice said. If you insist. Space tore open. There was no other way to describe it. One moment there was nothing but empty darkness. The next moment, something massive was appearing, as if reality itself was peeling back to reveal what had been hidden beneath. The Prometheus Decloaked then had seen many things in his 3 centuries of life. He had seen stars die. He had seen worlds burn. He had seen the mightiest warships in the galaxy engage in battle. But he had never seen anything like this. The human ship was enormous, not just large, but impossibly, incomprehensibly huge. It dwarfed his flagship. It dwarfed his entire fleet. Its hull was black metal, angular and predatory, covered in weapons that Throw did not recognize. Its surface seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to look at directly, and from its bow projected a single massive structure, like a cannon that glowed with barely contained energy. For a long moment the bridge was completely silent. Then his sensor officer spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Captain, that ship is 10 km long. Then could not speak. His mouth open, but no words came out. Its power signature is I have never seen anything like it. It is generating more energy than our entire fleet combined. Its weapons, Captain, I do not even know what some of these weapons are. They do not match anything in our database. That is impossible. Then call finally managed. The humans do not have this technology. They cannot have this technology. But the evidence was right. In front of him, the impossible ship hung in space, silent and patient, waiting. The human voice came again, and now Cal could hear something in it that he had not noticed before. Not arrogance, not aggression, something worse, pity. Captain Cal, I am Admiral Chen Wei of the United Nations Space Command. You have seen our ship. You understand now what you are facing. I give you one final opportunity to withdraw, take your fleet and leave. Report what you have seen to your superiors. Tell them that the containment has failed. Tell them that humanity is no longer what they thought it was. She paused. But do not fight us. You cannot win, and I do not wish to kill you. Then felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear, real, genuine fear, the kind of fear that made his heart's race and his hands tremble. But he was Dominari. The Dominari did not retreat. The Dominari did not surrender. The Dominari fought until victory or death. All ships, he ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. Target that vessel. Prepare to fire on my command. His officers hesitated. Captain, his first officer said quietly, perhaps we should consider. I gave you an order. Then shouted, we are Dominari. We do not run from anyone. Target that ship and prepare to fire. Slowly, reluctantly, his fleet responded. 300 warships turned their weapons toward the Prometheus. Missile tubes opened, energy weapons charged, targeting systems locked on. The view screen, the human ship did not move. It simply hung there waiting. Admiral Chin, Ankle broadcast, this is your final warning. Surrender now or we will destroy you. The response came immediately. Captain Cal, I was hoping you would be wise. I was hoping You would see reason, but I understand. You are proud, your people are proud. You have never lost, you do not know how. To retreat, a pause, I am sorry for what is about to happen, then felt a chill run through his body, but he pushed it aside. All ships fire, 300 warships unleashed everything they had, missiles by the thousands streaked across space. Energy beams of every color carved through the darkness. Nuclear weapons detonated in massive chains of destruction. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a planet. It was enough to crack a moon. It was enough to burn a small star. It hit the Prometheus and did nothing. The human ship did not evade. It did not even try. It simply sat there as the barrage washed over it like water over stone. Explosions bloomed against its hull and faded away. Energy beams splashed against invisible barriers and dissipated into nothing. Missiles detonated in brilliant flashes that illuminated the ship for brief moments before darkness returned. When the barrage ended, the Prometheus was completely untouched, then stared at his Vucrin in disbelief. How he whispered, "That is not possible." His sensor officer's voice was shaking. "Captain, their shields, I have never seen readings like this. Our weapons did not even register. It is like we were firing at empty space. They absorbed everything on the view screen." The Prometheus began to move. Slowly, deliberately, it turned to face the eternal judgment directly. The massive cannon on its bow began to glow brighter. Admiral Chen's voice came one last time. "That was unwise, Captain." The Prometheus fired. A single beam of light lanced out from the human ship, but it was not ordinary light. It was something else, something that seemed to twist space around it as it traveled. It moved faster than Thrall's eyes could follow, faster than his sensors could track. It hit the eternal judgment. There was no explosion, no debris, no dying screams over the communication channels. The ship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next moment it was gone, not destroyed, erased as if it had never been. The beam continued through the space where the eternal judgment had been. It hit the ship behind it, then the ship behind that, then the next. 6 Dominari warships vanished in the span of a heartbeat. Then Cal was dead before he even understood what was happening. His last thought was not of his family, or his empire, or his duty. It was a simple, terrible realization. They were wrong about the humans. They were all wrong. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Afterwards, the surviving Dominari vessels fled in all directions, their crews broadcasting distress signals on every frequency. They screamed about monsters, about demons, about a ship that could not be hurt and could not be stopped. Admiral Cheney stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and watched them go. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sad. "Should we pursue, Admiral?" her tactical officer asked. Chen shook her head. "No, let them run. Let them tell everyone what they saw." She turned away from the view screen. "We gave them a chance. We gave them every chance. They chose not to listen." The Prometheus hung alone in space, surrounded by the fading energy signatures of destroyed ships. 287 Dominari warships had been erased in 4 minutes. The human vessel had not taken a single point of damage. In the distance, the survivors continued to flee, carrying their message to the galaxy. The containment had failed. Humanity was awake, and they were coming. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours of the battle, every major civilization had received the distress signals. Within days, the recordings were everywhere. Shaky footage captured by fleeing ships showed the impossible: a human vessel, massive beyond comprehension, destroying a Dominari fleet in minutes. The galaxy watched in horror on a 100,000 worlds. Leaders gathered to view the recordings. They watched Dominari weapons splash uselessly against human shields. They watched the Prometheus fire its terrible beam, erasing ships as if they were made of smoke. They watched the survivors flee, their voices raw with terror, and they asked themselves the same question. How had the humans built such a ship? How had they hidden it? How had the galaxy's most advanced civilization failed to notice what was happening right under their noses? The answer was simple, though no one wanted to believe it. They had been arrogant. They had been foolish. They had looked at humanity and seen only what they expected to see, and now they would pay for their blindness. Admiral Cheney sat alone in her quarters aboard the Prometheus, staring at a photograph on her wall. It showed a young man in a military uniform, smiling at the camera with the confident grin of youth. Her son David, dead for 53 years now. Silthine had killed him. Their raiders had attacked a human colony ship, claiming it had strayed into their territory. 3,000 colonists had died, including David and his young family. Chen's grandchildren, whom she had never met, had been only 4 and 6 years old. The Silene had paid compensation. They had expressed regret. They had promised it would never happen again. It had happened again to other families, other children. The galaxy had treated human lives as worthless for a century, and humanity had been forced to accept it because they had no choice. But now they had a choice. Chen closed her eyes and let herself remember. 100 years ago, humanity had discovered faster than light travel. It had been an accident, really a side effect of experiments with exotic matter. Within a decade, humans had colonized 30 worlds. Within 2 decades, they had contacted their first alien civilization. It had not gone well. The galaxy looked at humanity and saw something terrifying: a young species barely out of its cradle, already reaching for the stars. Species with a history of violence and conquest. A species that bred quickly and spread faster. A species that refused to know its place. The older civilizations of the galaxy had seen this pattern before. They remembered other young species that had risen too fast, that had spread too far, that had eventually threatened the established order. Those species no longer existed. The decision was unanimous: humanity would be contained. The embargo had been devastating. Cut off from galactic trade, human colonies withered without access to alien technology. Their ships remained primitive. Without allies, they had no protection. Dominari patrols accidentally destroyed human vessels on a regular basis. Silthian raiders attacked human colonies with impunity. The RX hegemony poisoned human trade routes with biological weapons, and humanity could do nothing. For the first decade, they had pleaded. They had sent ambassador after ambassador to the conclave, begging for recognition, for trade, for mercy. They had been refused. Every time. For the second decade, they had protested. They had pointed out the injustice, the cruelty, the hypocrisy of the galaxy's treatment. They had been ignored for the third decade they had. Simply endured, they had pulled back. From the borders, stopped sending ships. Where they were not wanted, focused on their own territory. The galaxy had assumed they had accepted their fate. The galaxy had been wrong, deep in human space, far from prying eyes. Something had been discovered, a dead world, orbiting a dying star, a world covered in ruins that predated the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, a world that held secrets older than history itself. The precursors humans had called them, no one knew their true name, no one knew where they had come from or where they had gone, but they had left something behind, technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand stars, engines that could cross the galaxy in moments, and most importantly, they had left knowledge, the knowledge of how they had done it, how they had risen from nothing to become gods, how they had built machines that could reshape reality itself. Humanity had found this knowledge, and over the course of 90 years they had learned to use it. It had not been easy. The precursor technology was complex beyond imagining. Understanding it required rethinking everything humans knew about physics, about engineering, about the nature of reality itself. Entire generations of scientists had devoted their lives to unraveling its secrets, but humans were nothing if not determined. The first precursor-derived ship had been completed 30 years ago, a small vessel, barely larger than a Dominary patrol ship, but equipped with weapons and shields that made everything else in the galaxy look like children's toys. It had been tested in secret, hidden from the galaxy's sensors by technology that the older civilizations could not even detect. Then they had built more. Prometheus was the 20th ship in the line. It was also the largest and most powerful. Its crew called it the Harbinger because they knew what its appearance would mean for the galaxy. The beginning of the end. Chen opened her eyes and looked at the photograph of her son one more time. We tried, David, she said quietly. We tried everything else. They would not let us live in peace. They would not stop hurting us. She stood up and walked to the door. Now they will learn what happens when they push humanity too far. The bridge of the Prometheus was busy when she arrived. Officers hurried between stations, monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The battle had sent shock waves through civilized space, and everyone was scrambling to understand what had happened. Admiral on the bridge, someone called, and the crew snapped to attention. As you were, Chen said, walking to her command chair. What is the situation? Her executive officer, Captain Marcus Webb, handed her a tablet. The recordings have reached every major civilization. Admiral, the Conclave has called an emergency session. Fleet movements are being detected across the galaxy. They are scared, Chen said. It was not a question. Terrified, sir. Our analysts estimate they are pulling ships from every sector to form a unified response fleet. Current estimates suggest they will have at least 50,000 warships assembled within the month. Chen nodded. Good. Webb looked at her uncertainly. Good, sir. 50,000 ships in one place is much more efficient than 50,000 ships spread across the galaxy. When we destroy them, we will only have to do it once. The bridge fell silent. Every officer understood what the admiral was saying. Every officer knew what was coming. War, total, complete, unavoidable war, and humanity intended To win, Admiral, the communications officer called out, "We are receiving a transmission from Earth, Priority Alpha." On screen, the main view screen flickered and the face of President Elena Rodriguez appeared. She was a small woman with dark hair and sharp eyes, and she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. "Admiral Chen," she said, "I have reviewed your report. The battle proceeded as expected." "Yes, Madame President, enemy casualties were total. Our casualties were 0, and the survivors, they escaped to spread the word." "Yes, ma'am. By now every civilization in the galaxy knows what happened here." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Then it is time, Admiral Chen, by the authority vested in me as President of the United Earth Government, I am hereby issuing War Order Alpha. You are authorized to proceed with Operation Revelation." Chen felt her heartbeat faster. They had planned for this moment. They had trained for this moment, but hearing the words spoken aloud still sent a chill through her. "Understood, Madam President. Operation Revelation is authorized. Show them, Admiral, show them what we have become. Show them what a century of cruelty has created." "Yes, ma'am." The screen went dark. Chen turned to her crew. They were watching her, waiting, their faces a mixture of determination and fear. These were her people. They had trained together, fought together, bled together. They knew what was coming, and they were ready for it. "You heard the President," Chen said. "Operation Revelation is go. All ships prepare for immediate deployment." She paused, looking around the bridge one more time. "For 100 years, the galaxy has treated us like animals. They have killed our people. They have destroyed our ships. They have told us that we are nothing, that we deserve nothing, that we will never be anything." Her voice grew stronger. "Today we prove them wrong. Today we show them what humanity truly is. Not the violent children they imagine, not the primitives they dismissed, but something far, far more dangerous." She smiled, and there was something cold in that smile. "We are the species that never forgets. We are the species that never gives up. We are the species that finds a way, no matter how long it takes, no matter how impossible it seems." She stood straighter. "We gave them every chance. We tried peace. We tried diplomacy. We tried patience. They chose to treat us as enemies. They chose to push us into a corner." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And now they will learn what happens when they corner humanity." She turned to face the viewscreen where the stars waited in silent darkness. "All ships commence Operation Revelation. Today the galaxy learns the truth. Across human space, 100 hidden shipyards open their doors. Ships that had never been seen before rose from concealed bases on hidden moons and secret stations. Some were as large as the Prometheus, some were larger. All of them were armed with weapons the galaxy had never imagined. Protected by shields the galaxy could not penetrate. For 100 years, humanity had been hiding. For 100 years, humanity had been building. For 100 years, humanity had been waiting. The waiting was over. The human fleet began to move, and the galaxy trembled. In the great hall of the conclave, the crystals had stopped glowing red. They had turned black, a color that had not been seen in thousands of years, a color that meant only one thing: extinction. Someone's extinction was coming, and for the first time in their long history, the species of the galaxy were not sure it would be. Humanities, the Conclave had never seen anything like this. In its 12,000-year history, the Great Hall had witnessed wars and treaties, the rise of empires, and the fall of civilizations. It had seen species ascend to greatness and others fade into extinction, but it had never in all that time seen panic until now. The representatives of 1,000 species crowded the hall, their voices rising in a chaos of fear and accusation. The orderly tiers that usually held dignified ambassadors were now filled with shouting, gesturing figures who had abandoned all pretense of civilization. "How did this happen?" screamed the Cillian ambassador, his liquid silver body churning with agitation. "You said the humans were contained. You said they were primitive." "We were deceived," shouted a representative of the Oryx hegemony, his massive armored form trembling with rage. "Someone must have helped them. This technology could not have been developed alone. It does not matter how it happened," another voice cried. "What matters is what we do now, High Arbiter." Keth stood at the center of the chaos, his face a mask of cold fury. His finest fleet had been destroyed, his finest captain had been erased from existence. And everywhere he looked, he saw the same expression in the eyes of the other species: fear and blame. "Silence!" he roared, his voice cutting through the noise. The hall fell quiet, though the tension remained thick as smoke. "This is not the time for accusations. This is the time for action." He gestured, and holographic images appeared in the air around him, images of the Prometheus, images of the battle, images that had already become infamous across the galaxy. "The humans have revealed themselves," Kevorin said. "They have shown us their true nature. They are not the primitive species we believed. They are something far more dangerous." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But they are still one species. They still have limited numbers, limited resources. If we act quickly, if we act together, we can still destroy them." "With what?" the Esthane ambassador demanded. "Did you see the recordings? That one ship destroyed nearly 300 of our finest warships. How many ships do they have? How many weapons like that? We do not know," Keth admitted. "Our intelligence on human space has always been limited. We assumed we did not need to know more." "You assumed," the Silene said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You assumed, and now we may all pay for your arrogance." Kevorin's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Be careful, Ambassador." The Silene were just as confident in the containment as anyone else. "You do not have the right to cast blame before the argument could escalate." A new voice cut through the tension. "High Arbiter, we are receiving a transmission." The hall fell silent. Every eye turned to the communications console where a Dominari officer was working frantically at his controls. Source Kethforon demanded human space. "Sir, it is being broadcast on all frequencies, all wavelengths. They are not even trying to hide it. Put it through." The holographic images of the battle disappeared, replaced by a single face, a human face, a woman, elderly but sharp-eyed, wearing the simple black uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. "Ambassador Yelenbuscus, greetings." "Conclave," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I hope you remember me." Ripple of recognition passed through the hall. Many of the representatives had been present when Vasquez had delivered humanity's petition. Many of them had laughed at her. No one was laughing now. "I warned you," Vasquez continued, "when I stood before you, I told you to remember. That moment, I told you that you might come to regret your decision. I see now that you remember. She smiled slightly, and there was no warmth in it. For 100 years, you treated humanity as less than nothing. You killed our people, you destroyed our ships, you poisoned our colonies, you told us that we were animals fit only to be caged and controlled. Her voice hardened. You were wrong about everything. The image shifted, showing the Prometheus, surrounded by dozens of other ships, massive vessels, each one bristling with weapons that the galaxy had never seen. This is the human fleet, the fleet we have been building while you watched us and laughed, the fleet we have been preparing while you congratulated yourselves on how cleverly you had contained us. The image shifted again, showing shipyards filled with vessels in various stages of construction, hundreds of them, thousands, and this is what is coming. Every day we build more, every day we grow stronger. While you were playing your games and fighting your petty wars, we were preparing for this moment. Vasquez's face returned to the screen. We do not want war, she said. We never wanted war. We wanted only to be left alone, to live in peace, to be treated as equals. She paused. But you would not allow that. You chose to be our enemies. You chose to treat us as threats to be eliminated, and now you must face the consequences of that choice. What do you want? Keith Vorn demanded, stepping forward. Name your terms. Human. Vasquez smiled. It is simple, High Arbiter. We want what we asked for 100 years ago. Recognition, trade rights, the right to travel freely among the stars, the right to be treated as a civilized species. And if we agree, then the war ends before it truly begins. Your ships will not be destroyed. Your worlds will not burn. Your people will live. Keith Voren's jaw tightened. And if we refuse, Vasquez's smile faded, then you will learn what humanity is truly capable of, and you will not enjoy the lesson. She paused. One final time. You have 3 days to respond. Use them wisely. Transmission ended. The hall erupted in chaos once more. We must surrender. Someone shouted, we cannot fight this. Surrender to humans. Never. We are the masters of this galaxy. You saw the recordings. You saw what they did. One battle does not make a war. We can still win. Keith Voren stood in the center of the storm, his mind racing. He was Dominari. His people had ruled the stars for 50,000 years. They had never surrendered. They had never retreated. The very idea was unthinkable, but he had seen the recordings. He had watched his finest ships be erased like they were nothing, and he could not shake the feeling that what he had seen was only a fraction of what the humans truly possessed. Silence, he roared once more. We will take a vote. All those in favor of accepting the human terms. Few hands rose. The merchant guilds, some of the smaller species, those who valued profit over pride. All those in favor of resistance. More hands rose. The Dominari, of course, the Oryx hegemony, several of the warrior cultures, but it was not unanimous. The Silthene ambassador stepped forward. His liquid silver body had stopped churning, settling into a smooth, calm surface. The Silene will not participate in this vote, he said. We have made our own calculations. We have analyzed the data from the battle. We have projected the likely outcomes of continued conflict. He posed. Our conclusion is that resistance is futile. The war is already lost. We simply have Not finished fighting it yet. A gasp of shock ran through the hall. What are you saying? Keverin demanded. I am saying that the Silene will not die for your pride, High Arbiter. We are withdrawing from the Alliance. We will seek separate peace with the humans. You cannot do this. The Charter of the Conclave. The Charter of the Conclave assumes that the Conclave can protect its members. It cannot protect us from this, and so we are leaving. The Silthine ambassador turned and began to walk toward the exit. Slowly, hesitantly, other delegations began to follow. The merchant guilds, the crystalline mines of Vastus, species after species peeled away from the Alliance, seeking to save themselves. Within an hour, the conclave had fractured. Keverin stood alone in the great hall, surrounded by the representatives of those species who remained, the Dominari, the Oryx, a handful of others, those who were too proud, too stubborn, or too stupid to recognize the truth. Very well, he said, his voice cold as ice. Let the cowards run. Let them beg for mercy from the humans. We will not bow. We will not kneel. We will fight until the last ship, the last soldier, the last breath. His officers cheered, but deep down in a place he would never admit to anyone, Keith Vorn wondered if he was leading his people to glory or to extinction. 2 days later, Ambassador Vasquez returned to the conclave. The great hall was nearly empty now. Most of the species had withdrawn, seeking their own arrangements with humanity. Only the Dominari and their closest allies remained, their delegations arrayed in defiant formation. Vasquez walked to the speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. She looked older than she had before, tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. High Arbiter Kethvin, she said, I have received the responses of the various species. I note that you and your allies have chosen to reject our terms. We have, KTH Vorin said proudly. The Dominari do not surrender. The Dominari do not bow to lesser species. Whatever you have built, whatever weapons you have developed, we will find a way to defeat you. We will fight to the end. Vasquez nodded slowly. I expected this. I hoped otherwise, but I expected this. She looked around the nearly empty hall, at the species that had already fled, at those that remained. I want you to understand something, High Arbiter. We did not want this. Everything that is about to happen, everything that will follow, we tried to avoid it. We sent ambassadors, we made petitions, we asked for peace. Her voice hardened. You refused. Every time you refused, and your people killed our people, and you laughed while you did it. She stepped closer to Keth Vorin. There is a saying among humans, be careful what you wish for. You wish to treat us as enemies. You wish to push us into a corner. You wish to force us to become the monsters you believed us to be. She met his eyes. Congratulations, High Arbiter. Your wish has been granted. She turned and began to walk away. This is not over, human, Keith Vorn shouted after her. We will fight. We will never surrender. Vasquez paused at the door. Then you have chosen extinction, she said quietly. I am sorry we gave you every chance. She walked out of the great hall for the last time. Behind her, the living crystals of the walls began to pulse with a new color, a color darker than black, a color that seemed to swallow light itself, the color of endings. The war had begun. The war lasted 3 months later. Historians would struggle to explain how such an ancient and powerful civilization could fall so quickly. The Dominari Empire had endured. For 50,000 years, they had conquered 300 star systems. They had defeated every enemy they had ever faced. They fell in 90 days. The human fleet moved through Dominari space like a fire through dry wood. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their shields impenetrable. Every defensive line the Dominari built was broken. Every fleet they assembled was destroyed. Every world they tried to defend was captured. But the humans did not simply conquer. They did something far more unsettling. They offered mercy. Every Dominari world that surrendered was spared. Every officer who laid down arms was treated with respect. Every civilian was protected. The humans did not burn cities or massacre populations. They did not enslave or torment. They simply took control and moved on. It was not what the Dominari had expected. It was not what anyone had expected. High Arbiter Kethvan had promised his people glory. He had promised them that the humans would prove themselves to be the monsters everyone believed them to be. He had promised that history would vindicate the galaxy's treatment of humanity. Instead, he watched as world after world fell, and the humans proved gentler conquerors than the Dominari themselves had ever been. It drove him mad. The final battle took place above the Dominari home world. Keith Voron had gathered every ship that remained, every vessel that could still fly. 40,000 warships arranged in a sphere around their sun, protecting the world that had given birth to their civilization. It was everything they had left, their last hope, their final stand. The human fleet arrived at dawn. Keverin stood on the bridge of his new flagship, watching the sensors as the enemy emerged from faster than light travel. He had prepared himself for the Prometheus, the ship that had haunted his nightmares for 3 months. What he saw was far worse. Prometheus was there, yes, but it was no longer the largest ship in the human fleet. Behind it came vessels that beggar imagination, massive constructs, each one the size of a moon, bristling with weapons that glowed with barely contained energy, ships that seemed to bend space around them, their hulls flickering in and out of visibility as if they existed in multiple dimensions at once. Hundreds of them, hundreds of ships, any one of which could have destroyed his entire fleet alone. By the ancestors, whispered his first officer. What have they been building? Kevorin did not answer. He could not answer. For the first time in his long life, he truly understood what humanity had done. The containment had not stopped them. The embargo had not weakened them. The century of abuse had not broken them. It had only made them angry. The human fleet spread out surrounding the Dominari defensive sphere. For a long moment nothing happened. The two forces simply faced each other in silence. One, the culmination of 50,000 years of civilization. The other, the product of 100 years of hidden fury. Then Admiral Chen's voice echoed across every communication channel. High Orbiter Keth Voron, this is Admiral Chen Wei of the United Nations Space Command. I address you directly. Kev Voron straightened his shoulders. Whatever came next, he would face it with dignity. I am listening. Admiral, you have fought well. Your people have shown courage. You have not surrendered, even when surrender was the only rational choice. I respect that. I do not need your respect, human. Perhaps not, but you will have it anyway. There Was a pause. I am offering you one final choice, High Arbiter. Order your fleet to stand down, surrender yourself and your senior officers to face trial for crimes against humanity. Allow your people to live. And if I refuse, then we will destroy your fleet, every ship, every soldier, and when we are done, we will land on your home world and arrest your leaders anyway. The only difference will be how many of your people die. Before it is over, Keith Thorne felt something stir in his chest, not fear. Not anymore. He had been afraid for 3 months. He had watched his empire crumble, his people die, his entire way of life collapse around him. There was no room left for fear. What he felt was something else, something he had not expected. Relief. He looked around his bridge at the officers who had served him faithfully, young men and women who had families waiting for them on the world below, soldiers who had done their duty, followed orders, fought bravely. A war that was not their fault. They did not deserve to die for his pride. Admiral Chen, he said slowly, if I surrender, what happens to my people? They will live. Your civilization will continue. Your culture, your art, your history, all of it will be preserved. We are not here to destroy you, High Arbiter. We are here to stop you from destroying us, and my leaders, the officers, they will face trial for their actions during the containment era. Those found guilty will be punished according to human law. Those found innocent will be released. And me, you ordered the deaths of thousands of humans over the past 3 months. High Arbiter, you will face trial. The outcome will depend on the evidence. Keith Voren nodded slowly. It was fair. More than fair. Far more merciful than he deserved, far more merciful than he would have been in their position. He looked at his officers one last time. Some of them were crying, some were praying, some just stood in silence, waiting for his decision. First Officer Thrankel, he said quietly, yes, High Arbiter, you have a daughter, do you? Not a young girl. Thrankel swallowed hard. Yes, sir. She is 7 years old. What is her name, sir? Sir Keith Voren closed his eyes. Sir deserves to grow up with a father, he said. All the children on that world deserve to grow up. All the families deserve to stay together. He opened his eyes. We have lost this war. We lost it the moment we decided to treat humanity as enemies instead of neighbors. Continuing to fight will not change that. It will only add more names to the list of the dead. He reached up and slowly removed his insignia of rank, the symbol of the High Arbiter worn by the leaders of the Dominari for 10,000 years. Admiral Chen, he said, his voice steady, I am ordering my fleet to stand down. I am surrendering myself and my senior officers into your custody. I ask only that you keep your promise and spare my people. There was silence on the communication channel. Then Chen's voice returned, and for the first time, Keith Voren heard something in it besides cold professionalism. He heard respect. Your surrender is accepted, High Arbiter. Your people will be spared. You have my word. Keith Voren nodded. Then it is done. He turned to his officers. All ships power down weapons and lower shields. The war is over. One by one, the Dominary warships went dark. 40,000 vessels, the pride of a 50,000 empire, surrendered without firing a shot, and the galaxy changed forever. 10 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy was different now. The old order, built on fear and hierarchy, and the assumption that some species were simply better than others, had collapsed. In its place something new was being built. The human-led coalition had replaced the conclave. Its membership was open to any species, willing to accept its basic principles: equality, cooperation, and the recognition that every civilization had something valuable to offer. Many species had joined eagerly. The Silene, who had been among the first to surrender, had become some of humanity's closest allies. The crystalline minds of Festus had opened their archives of knowledge, sharing discoveries that advanced galactic science by centuries. Even some of the former enemies, the species that had fought alongside the Dominari, had eventually applied for membership. The Dominari themselves were still rebuilding. Their empire was gone, replaced by a loose federation of independent worlds. Their leaders had faced trial, many of them sentenced to long terms of imprisonment for their roles in the containment era, but their people survived. Their culture endured. Their children grew up in a galaxy that was safer, if stranger, than the one their parents had known. Ambassador Yellen Vasquez, now old beyond measure, visited the Dominary home world on the 10th anniversary of the surrender. She walked slowly through the capital city, accompanied by a small escort of human and Dominari guards. The city had changed. The towering monuments to conquest and domination had been torn down, replaced by parks and memorials. The streets that had once echoed with military parades now hosted markets and festivals where species from across the galaxy mingled freely. Vasquez stopped at a memorial in the center of the city. It was a simple structure, a wall of polished black stone inscribed with names, thousands of names, millions of names, the names of everyone who had died in the war on both sides. Human names and Dominari names, Silthine names and Oryx names, all of them together, equally honored, equally mourned. She stood in silence, reading the names, remembering. A young Dominari approached her. He was tall and thin, with the distinctive red skin and golden eyes of his species, but his eyes held none of the contempt that Vasquez remembered from her earlier visits to the conclave, only curiosity. You are the human ambassador, he said, the one from the videos. Vasquez smiled slightly. I was once. I'm retired now. My teachers talk about you. They say you warned us. They say you tried to stop the war before it started. I tried. We all tried. The young Dominari looked at the memorial wall. Why did you not destroy us? He asked. You could have. Everyone says so. Your fleet could have burned our worlds and killed our people. We would have done it to you if our positions were reversed. Why did you spare us? Vasquez was silent for a long moment, considering the question. She had been asked it many times over the years. She had never quite found the perfect answer, because that is what they expected us to do. She finally said, your leaders, the conclave, the entire galaxy. They looked at humanity and saw monsters. They saw violence and aggression and destruction. They believed that was our true nature. She turned to face the young Dominari. We spent 100 red years in the dark, young one, 100 years alone, cut off from the galaxy, forced to rely only on ourselves. We had time to think, time to decide who we wanted to be. She looked up at the stars, visible even in the daylight of the Dominari home world. We could have become what they feared. We could have let our anger consume us. We could have built our ships in our weapons and then used them to burn the galaxy that had tried to cage us. She shook her head, but we decided that was not the species we wanted to be. We decided that we would be better than our enemies, better than our history, better than the galaxy expected. She smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. Humanity has made many mistakes, young one. We have caused much suffering to ourselves and to others, but we are capable of learning. We are capable of growing. We are capable of choosing to be better. She reached out and touched the memorial wall, her fingers tracing over the names of the dead. This wall exists because we did not want to kill. We did not want to destroy. We wanted only to be free. And when we achieved that freedom, we chose to use our power to build rather than to burn. She turned back to the young Dominari. That is why we spared you, because you are not your leaders. You are not the ones who tried to destroy us. You are just people trying to live your lives, hoping for a better future, and you deserve the chance to have one. The young Dominari was silent for a long time, processing her words. Do you think we can be friends? He finally asked. Humans and Dominari, after everything that happened. Vasquez considered the question. I think friendship takes time. It takes effort. It takes the willingness to forgive past wrongs and trust that the future can be different. She looked at him steadily. But yes, I think we can be friends. I think we will be friends. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow, but someday. The children of Earth and the children of Dominar will look back at this time and barely remember why their ancestors fought. She gestured at the memorial wall. That is why we built this, not to remind people of the war, but to remind them of its cost, to ensure that future generations understand what happens when fear and hatred are allowed to rule. She turned and began to walk away. Wait, the young Dominari called. Ambassador Vasquez. She paused. Thank you, he said, for sparing us, for giving us a chance. Vasquez smiled one last time. Use it well, young one. The future is in your hands now, yours and all the young people across the galaxy. Make it better than the past. She walked away, leaving the young Dominari alone at the memorial. He stood there for a long time, reading the names, thinking about everything she had said. Then he turned and walked back into the city, back into a future that was strange and uncertain and full of possibility. The galaxy had chosen extinction for humanity. They had learned too late that humanity had chosen something else entirely, not revenge, not conquest, not the fire and destruction that everyone had expected. They had chosen hope, and in the end, hope had